Reports are emerging of Israeli atrocities during a siege on Gaza's al-Shifa hospital that, if proven, would constitute the most heinous of war crimes. According to a statement released by Hamas and based on witness accounts, Israeli troops carried out horrific executions of civilians. Dozens of decomposing bodies have been found in the medical compound. Local officials say around 300 Palestinians were killed. There are reports, and I've got to stress that these are unconfirmed at this time, that some of the victims had their hands tied and they were buried alive. And others, according to eyewitness accounts, were crushed with tanks in what appears to be an attempt to cover up evidence.
The most agonizing moment is when the Israeli soldiers shot dead civilian men before our own eyes. Some were shot dead, others were buried alive in ditches. Most of the dead bodies were bulldozed and buried by the Israelis. I saw many young men handcuffed and blindfolded, thrown in a ditch and buried with sand. We witnessed it all. It happened before our own eyes.
Abu Afhash, he's director of the Palestinian Medical Relief Society. He's joining us from the site of the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City. We're going to be talking to him through a translator. Sir, thank you very much indeed for being with us on Al Jazeera. I hope you can hear me okay. Can you describe to our viewers, first of all, what it is you can see and hear and possibly smell as well, because that is a sense that people cannot get watching on TV?
First of all, thank you for having me on Al Jazeera. I am a Palestinian citizen. I lived through this war and even before. What happened at the Al-Shifa hospital is beyond description. The Israeli occupation forces stormed a civilian hospital, a medical facility catering to civilian population. The Israeli soldiers stormed the hospital and opened fire indiscriminately on all those inside the hospital. This is a war crime. This is unprecedented in history. An Israeli, as an occupation force, opens fire, executing and killing patients, the wounded, and even the medical staff. This constitutes war crimes, punishable under the international law and the humanitarian law. And as I said, the medical staff were assaulted, and this is highly condemned by the entire medical staff. And this is not the first time the Israeli occupation forces storming hospitals. Before, they totally destroyed 7 hospitals and medical centers all across centers, namely in the north part of Gaza.
Sir, can I interrupt you there? I'd like to get your opinion, please, on what it is that you are seeing and hearing at Al-Shifa hospital while you're there. Sir, I hope you can hear me. It's Rob Matheson in Al Jazeera.
I said that we as a medical staff, the entire health ministry and medical staff, we condemn these crimes committed by the Israeli occupation forces.
Sir, could I ask you, please, there are reports which have not yet been confirmed that some of the victims had their hands tied and they were buried alive. Have you seen any evidence of that?
That's true. Absolutely true. I was present at Al-Shifa hospital at 6 a.m. this morning. I myself witnessed victims handcuffed behind their backs, blindfolded, and buried in this hospital yard. In the emergency unit, we found dozens of dead bodies. All of them were handcuffed behind their backs and blindfolded. These were utter war crimes. These are unprecedented throughout history. We have never seen anything like this in any other war.
Sir, we have heard reports that there were attempts by the Israeli troops to cover up the evidence by using tanks and bulldozers to cover over the ground. Have you seen any evidence of that yourself?
That's quite natural. The ultimate living evidence to this is that they have laid tight siege to the entire hospital compound for 15 days. During all this time, they have been trying to cover up for their crimes. They have rounded up, tortured, and executed some of the medical staff. We have spoken to many of the survivors. They themselves witnessed for their own eyes that they have witnessed many Palestinians being executed, including the patients. Another living proof is the number of patients. Before the hospital was sieged, we had figures of the total number of patients. After the siege, this number has dropped.
Sir, can you tell me what has happened to the people who had been sheltering at the hospital and the remaining medical staff?
Many of the medical staff were detained. Some were released and some were executed. As to the patients, as I said, the total number of patients before the siege, before this attack was high. Only now 187 were found. As I said, many of the patients were executed, many of the medical staff were executed, others detained, and the rest were released. Even the civilians who took shelter within the hospital compound, they were subjected to the same fate. Many were killed, others tortured, and the rest was released.
We have seen pictures of the level of destruction that has happened at Al-Shifa Hospital. Can you give us an indication of anything that is remaining, or is the entire hospital now not working?
Unfortunately, I regret to say what you have witnessed is only a tip of the iceberg. The entire hospital is ruined. You have seen the buildings charred and the traces of flames, but you did not see what's inside. All the medical appliances, all the medical equipment, all the medical supplies were torched, destroyed, and set fire on by the Israeli occupation soldiers. The hospital in its entirety is out of operation and out of service. We are appealing to the international community, health organizations, human rights organizations to intervene, to act swiftly in order to save the lives of those patients whose lives are hanging by a thread. As you know, this hospital was catering to the people of the north, and now it is out of service.
Dr. Mohammed Abu Afhash is director of the Palestinian Medical Relief Society. He's been talking to us from the site of the Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, where Israeli troops have been holding it under siege for about 2 weeks and have only withdrawn within the last few hours. Dr. Mohammed, thank you very much indeed.